Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Hey guys, hope you're doing great today. If any of you can hear me, please leave a message down in the chat to help me. If any of you can hear me, please leave a message down in the chat to help me. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. Okay, greetings everyone. Hope you're doing great and hope you're having a lovely day. Today we're going to be continuing from where I was stopped last week, which was actually yesterday. It's not last week. We basically looked at a Django project structure and we focused on Django apps and projects. We also looked at views and looked at how they could help us get a request and return a response. So when we navigate to a specific part of our application, what happens is we make a request to the server, and what the server does is to then make use of our views to return a response of a specific type. For now, all we returned were just HTML pages, and those HTML pages were the home page, the about page, and the contact page. So this is exactly where I'm going to continue from, and I'm going to be discussing HTML templates. Now, HTML templates or Django templates are just the presentation layer of your Django website or Django web application. And what I mean is, let me start my server right here. So I'll activate my virtual environment first with appenv scripts activate. And then I will run my server with Python money.py run server. So running our server will take us to our website or web application. And if I navigate to that web app, I'll close some of the stuff I have right here. Here is where we shall go to our app, and we basically have this simple setup right here. So whenever I render a file or a template, what we are doing is to basically render something that can allow for dynamic functionality. For the previous video, we just rendered HTML pages. And one thing we can notice is that all these HTML pages have the same content and have static content. So the content that we have on there cannot be modified in any way from the server side. So Django templates are basically ones in which you can modify data or manipulate data or be able to perform some nice logic on the front end or the presentation layer. But what allows for us to do that is the Django templating language. And in the previous session, I showed you something that is very basic about that templating language. if we are to go to our index.html, I think this time we see that we have some weird syntax in here. And what this syntax is doing is to help us pull a variable or pull a value from our context. So if you wonder where the context is, it's simply a dictionary that we set up on our view function inside the call to our render function right here. Its function is to help us be able to render a template. So what we do is to define the value we want to render in our template, and then when we define that value, whatever we're going to give it is going to be accessed using the key we give it. So if we give the key as title, refer to the object as page title, in our template we can use the special syntax right here to be able to inject that value from our views. And that's basically what makes these templates dynamic. So the difference between an HTML page and a template is that a template has some sort of functionality happening on the presentation layer. I'm going to be walking you through some of the things that we can perform, or some of the things we can do on the front end using the Django templating language. So the first thing we're going to do is to make sure that our web pages, the ones that we have currently, which are just the home page, the about page, and the contact page, have a layout that is uniform across the entire website. So what I'm meaning in this example is that what we're going to have here is different pages going to different sections or applications, but we may find ourselves having parts of our applications that are sharing some sort of UI. For example, we have our simple footer right here. This simple footer can be shared across all pages. We also have this main header right here, or the nav path section, that can be also shared across our pages. So for us to be able to achieve that, we can then make use of the Django templating syntax to allow us to create some sort of template inheritance through which we can then extend or inherit a certain layout from a base template. So to do that, we're going to go back to our templates. And what I mean is we're going to go back to our folder structure right here. Inside our folder structure, what we're interested in is the templates folder. Now, the templates folder is one in which you're always going to keep all your template files, and that's where Django will find them. If you specify them under the templates folder inside each app you create, Django will automatically just get those templates and render them. However, I also discussed how you can be in position to make use of the templates setting in your settings.py to determine other folders where you want Django to pick your templates. For example, if you specified a variable, or basically a value inside your does section right here, you can point it to another folder, let's say called other templates. And for as long as that exists within our root folder, Django will then go ahead and get all those templates and be able to access them. So I'll put this back and keep it empty. So what I'll do is to close this. When we head over back to our products, app, I'm going to go to our templates. One thing I'm going to do is to then organize the templates into subdirectories. So within templates, we can also have subfolders. For example, I can create a new folder right here and call this folder layouts, and this is going to be the one in which we're going to have layout files for our specific templates. Now for this case, I'll create a new file. This file is going to be called base.html, and base.html is a file that's going to contain all the UI we expect to be shared across the entire front end of our website. So what we're going to do in this case is to go ahead and we are going to just copy the sections that are shared across all the entire UI. So when I come right here, let me press Ctrl B to collapse that. If I decrease this in size, we shall notice that our HTML is simply consisting of the HTML head section. We also have the body, and inside the body we have the nav, we have the main part, and then we have the footer. So what we're going to be doing in this case is to make sure that the main part of our application is where the content of every page is going to lie. So instead of defining this on every page, we're going to have this being defined in a layout so that we can be in position to just inherit that layout and just fill in the content for a specific page. So to do that, I'm going to come right here, and then I'll grab the section from the opening main tab to the doc type. I'll cut it with Ctrl and X, and then move to base.html. So inside here is where I'm going to paste that section. I'll go back to about.html and do the same thing. So everything from the closing main tag up to the closing HTML tag will then be put inside our base.html. So if I go back right here, I am going to go ahead and remove that, or basically paste it here. So what we've so far done is to make sure that all the layout that is supposed to be shared across all the pages is moved to one file. But how does Django help us to be in position to define sections on a page that are going to be inherited? So that's where block tags come in. So if you are really confused by what I'm talking about when I say tags, tags are basically anything you're going to see containing this syntax. So if you install the Django extension, which I highly recommend you install, it's one that's going to help you be in position to get access to all those tags, filters, and variables within your template so that you can easily type them out. So when I say tag, I am meaning anything that has that syntax, where you have two curly braces, the opening one and the closing one, and then you have an opening percentage sign and a closing sign. So these are usually used to mark control flow or used to mark blocks, just like I'm going to be showing you right here. So the first thing we're going to do is to define the section of the page in which we're going to have our main content. So to do that, we're going to come right in here and we're going to define our main content. So our main content is going to be found inside the block. So the block tag is also one that the Django extension helps you to write. So what you're going to do is to just type in block and then the name of the block. So shall just call this our content, but you can feel free to call it whatever you want. In fact, you can even name it main content or main underscore content, and Django will still be in position to allow you to use it that way. So once you've defined this, you then need to go ahead and extend this layout in every page that is going to access it. So to do that, we can go to about.html, which is the first template in which we remove the shared sections of our entire web app. And what I'll do is to then go ahead and extend or inherit the layout we've so far defined. So today I'm going to be using a special tag, and that's going to be the extends tag. So extends takes in the template that you are inheriting your layout from. Now, one thing we can notice is that our base.html is found inside products, templates, and then layouts, which then takes us to base.html. But remember that Django is starting from the templates folder. So we need to just go ahead and specify that our layout file base.html is found inside layouts/base.html. So when I go to about, I'm going to just come right in here and I'll provide layouts/base.html. So that is just enough for us to have that page inheriting all the layouts that we've so far defined within our base HTML. Now the next thing is to fill the main content section with the page or with the content that's supposed to fit on that page. And for us to do that, I'm going to come right in here in about.html. I'm going to first of all cut our about heading. Oh, I'm making a mistake right here. So this is supposed to be layouts/base.html. So let me correct that. And once I correct that, I'm now going to go ahead and then write our block. So this block is going to be the same as what we've written right here. So it's going to be block main underscore content. and end block main content. So one thing to note is that all the code that we are going to define for this specific page is going to be under this specific section right here, which is the one for our about page. So that's exactly where I'm going to paste the about page heading. And when you go back to our about page, this time we shall see that the section or the layout is inherited, but then we have the content for that specific page. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the other pages. Now what I'm going to do is to just copy what we have in here and then search for our index.html, which is our home page. So I'll go ahead and remove everything that we have currently, since we are rendering a dynamic variable still using our Django templating syntax. So this is what they call a variable. In general, you can just say var, and that will create those brackets for you. So if we provide our title just like we had at the start, when we navigate back to our page or our website, going back to our home page will take us to the home page when we have the content for the home page as well as the other UI. So let's go to our contact page. So our contact page is still having all this, but what we need to do is to just go ahead and replace everything with the contact page. And just like that, we have been in position to achieve a shared UI throughout the entire application. So this is one of the things you can use your Django templates for. Django templates make it easy for you to have that shared UI and shared components across all the components you have within your application, which is very useful. Hello? Someone tell me if I'm still live. OBS disconnected. Okay, so we are live. All right, so one thing I'm going to do is to now go through what I've so far done. We are live. Okay, so just like I was explaining, what we've done so far is to go ahead and generate or be able to inherit layouts across all our pages using Django templating syntax or the Django templating language. And what this helped us to do was to be in position to go ahead and define a base template, which we then use to define the main layout of our application. We then extended that layout to be shared by the about page, the index page, and the contact page. So when you go back to our views, I've added some code, and that code is just to simply add context to each of the views we've so far done. So this context only contains one value, and that value is our page title. So one thing to note is that this page title is going to be used on each page, but I want to go ahead and also do that inside our base template. So to do that, I can come within our base template still, and in our base template inside our head section, I can also go ahead and define the block that is going to contain the title. So I can say something like block title, end block title. So that's the section in which you can define the title of a specific page. And then inside there is where we can then go ahead and define the title for a specific page. So we can do something like if title, then we can define the page or the title of the specific page. So for that case, we can do something like title, and instead of having the default document title that is provided to every HTML document, we can then provide a variable to pick that from our context. So that's going to be our title. We can also have, so this is an if statement written in the Django templates in syntax. We can also have things like else, so that helps us to conditionally render things. We can have else, and we can define the UI. We can render in case we are defining content for that specific, in case we do not have that condition being met. So if we don't have a title, Django is going to now render that default title we are going to have. So I'm going to call this product reviews. And yeah, that's going to be the website we're going to be building. So if I go back to the homepage right here and refresh, we now see that each of the pages are going to have the home page. We can also make this interesting by going right inside our code and changing our base layout to have the product reviews title plus the title we then need to show on the from the back end. So that means if we go back right here and refresh, we can then have product reviews homepage. If we were to go to the about page, we can then have product reviews about page. If we have the contact page, then we can have product reviews contact page. But in case we do not have a title, for example, if I went to my views and removed one title for, let's say, the contact page and saved, our contact page will then have just product reviews as the title section. So that can be something also that we can achieve using dynamic templates with Django. Something like if title, then we can define the page. All right, so yeah, that's how you define variables in the context when you're using the render function. So now that we've looked at that, let us also go ahead and do something interesting. I'm going to be fetching the data that I have organized for some sample products. And that data is not here, so I'm going to just go ahead and get it from my Linux. So I'm going to save this in the file in which I have this tutorial. So that's under documents and then Django series for beginners under the products folder. I'll select the folder and then finish. So yeah, I had written that file inside my Linux, and that's the special program I use for getting programs or files I want to recover from Linux. So now that I've got that file, if I go within our products app or application, we shall now see that we have a new file, but this new file is basically a file with dummy product data. So this dummy product data is data that we're going to be using to demonstrate how we can get values from a database and then render them into our template dynamically. So yeah, this is basically what we have for now. So one thing we're going to do is to then go ahead and list all these on our homepage or our homepage of our website. So yeah, to do that, we can first of all import. Let me close some of the stuff we have in here. When I go to abuse.py, we can go ahead and import that data within our home page. So I'll go at the top right here, and then I'll say from dot, which is our current folder, we shall access the data and then import products. So this is the list of dictionaries containing each of the items and their respective attributes, such as the ID of the product, the name, the description, the price, the category, and so on. So you can think of this as a dummy database of products, allowing us to be in position to see information about the products that we're going to be showing to our users. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and then close this file, or let me say I'll leave it open for now. When I go back to abuse.py, I'm going to go to our homepage view, and the first thing I'm going to do is to then be in position to just render this into our template. So I'll just create a variable here. I'm going to call that our products, and this product is going to of course be the products, or we can even call this product list or something. So let me just call this product list, and then let the object that's going to have the values be the products object. So once I want to introduce that into our context, all I have to do is to go within this dictionary right here, and then use a comma to separate the two values. So I can call this our products, and then I can provide the product list as the object containing the values we want to render on the front end. So once that is done, if we are to go back to our front end, we can then use a for loop to be in position to render and show all those items. So let's go ahead and look at how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and search for our index.html, which is our homepage file. Now, I'm going to change our title right here from homepage to maybe something like product list. So when I change that to product list, we'll then go ahead and basically have that as the heading, but under the heading we can have like a section or a container having all the data. So for now, what I'm going to do is to just create a div with a class of products. So if you haven't used VS Code, when you say .products, it will just create a div with a class, and then the class will be the product, or what you provide after that dot. So that's going to be the class of products. Now for each of these products, we're going to create an h4 that's going to have the product name. So I'll say product, and then I'll have to refer back to that data. So if I go in the data, each product is going to have a name. So the way we access attributes from an object is to just use dots. So if I say product dot name and go back here to our home page, we'll then see we have product list, and then because we want to use a for loop, we then have to go ahead and just use a for loop. Now lucky, January is going to suggest or provide for us the tag for that. So that works like the normal Python for loop, where I just say for product, or for product in what you provided in your context, which we called products. So you need to be or escape. Hello. Hope you guys can hear me. Please leave me some feedback in the chat. I'll then try to answer some of the questions that you guys have asked here in the chat. So the first question is ML and DS student, should I learn Django or Fast API? Well, for machine learning specific applications, I think it is wiser for you to learn Fast API because that's where the trend is. But if you want to get into web dev and want to learn how to build websites very fast or APIs, then you can use Django. However, for me, this is how I use Django. For projects where I need to deliver really fast, Django has always been the way to go. And then for Fast API, that's when I have time, that's when I can be creative, that's when I can at least afford to code for a lot of time. Because since Fast API is not that much of a batteries included framework like Django, you get to forge solutions or you get to work on things on your own. So the second question is, sir, have you tried Django 6? I've not. I haven't. I'm still working with Django 5. And I honestly do not know if there are significant changes in that version because there are quite a lot of things that stay the same. And I may be interested to look into it, so I'll go ahead and maybe look at the documentation and what it says about the Django version. So guys, please leave me some feedback in the chat. I'd like to know if you can hear me clearly because I'm sort of having issues with my internet right now.
So either we matched you with the best tutor for you.
All right, now we have done something very simple. What we've done is to render data dynamically from our page or dynamically from our, we've basically rendered data from our view to our template using our context. And what we've so far done is to only show data that is coming from the titles. So these are the different products we have within our data. So let's make this a little bit interesting by adding in a little bit of CSS. If you haven't worked with CSS, CSS is cascading style sheets. It's just a way for you to define styles you would like to add to organize and make things look a little bit beautiful on your web page. So by default, you are going to have to write your own CSS, but there are very many ways to go about writing CSS of late. There are frameworks like Bootstrap, there are frameworks like Tailwind CSS, but for this case, I'm going to be choosing to use Bootstrap CSS. And the reason that's why I'm choosing Bootstrap CSS is because it is a very mature CSS framework, and the beauty about it is that it can be understood by anyone as long as they put in the time. But then there are very many other ways to introduce CSS to your templates or to your HTML, like Tailwind CSS. I think it's even like the most popular right now. But what I do not like about it is the number of classes you have to write for you to be able to achieve something. For example, just from this section alone, you have to add like 7 classes for you to be able to achieve something. So you have to cram and understand all these classes, which is something that I'm not comfortable with, given the fact that I am not a front-end software developer or something. Yeah, now I'm going to be using Bootstrap for this, so I hope you guys do not mind. But even the beginner will find Bootstrap much more easier to use than any other CSS library. But before we get to introduce Bootstrap within our template, let us first of all introduce some basic CSS within our template. So the first thing we're going to do is to pick a font that we want to use within our template. Of course, by default, we understand that there are fonts that our browser will pick from our machine and use if we do not specify any of them. And these are fonts that can be maybe available on every user's machine, on everyone's machine. So the link tag is the way we provide CSS to a page that's coming from, let's say, a file. But then we can also use a style tag. So we can also create a block, and that block can be called styles, and that can define any CSS that we want to add to a specific part of a page. So if we want to go ahead and maybe add CSS for, let's say, something that is not to be shared across all pages, we may define a block styles, and then we can add that inside whatever page. So for example, before block main, I can come and have block styles, and then here will be a specific CSS for the styles that I'm going to have for this page. But I'm not going to be doing that. What I'm going to be doing is to show you how to introduce some CSS within your templates. So CSS, images, and JavaScript are looked at as static assets. Dynamic data is what we've been rendering. These things can change. In fact, if I went and changed something like, let's say, power bank Apple, this value of course will change on the server side, on the front end. So if I go to my power bank right here, that's power bank, but when I refresh, it's going to be power bank Apple, meaning that this data can change depending on which values are being returned from the back end, which is not the case for CSS. You can have CSS not change for quite a while. Now, to introduce CSS within your templates, you're going to be using a special tag, and that is the static tag. But before we look into that, let's see how we add CSS to a file. So just like I explained, you introduce a link tag that's going to be to a certain CSS file. But the thing is, Django always doesn't really read files the way normal HTML reads them. We have to specify a folder in which all these files are going to be located. So we need to go to our settings, and in our settings, we shall then see a static URL. We shall see a static URL setting. And what this setting is doing is helping us to be in position to see where our static files will be accessed on a URL. So if we define static files, these static files will be then exposed via the static URL, and that's the static setting. Give me a break. Let me first take some water right here. Okay, hope we are all still going and we are still paying attention. So yeah, so to proceed, I was still talking about the static URL setting. The static URL setting defines a URL on our root URL of our website. For example, if we have facebook.com, facebook.com/static will be the URL on which Django will expose all static files to be accessed. Now, for our case, if we want to be in position to write any static files, we have to put them in a specific folder, and that is the static folder. Just like we've done for templates by putting them in a templates folder, Django tends to find a static files that are specific to apps inside the static folder. Now, depending on what you want, you can organize them in a certain way. You can create different folders, like let's say CSS, and then maybe you create other folder like JS. That can also work. And then you put the individual files inside each, or you can even choose to just drop the files in there and then link them using the static tag. So for us, we're going to just go ahead and create a new file under our CSS. I'll call this main.css. So this is going to be like our main CSS file in which we're going to add different things to our project. So yeah, I can define a simple rule like all things are just going to have the font family, or let's say monospace. And once that is done, I then have to go ahead and use the link tag to access that CSS. Now, just like I explained, Django doesn't read CSS files the way we read them using normal HTML. We have to define how Django is going to pick that file and display it or make use of it. So there's a specific tag called the static tag, and when I type static, I have the generic extension. It will go ahead and write for me that tag. So this will take in the path inside our static folders where that specific file is located. If I want to point to main.css, I can just say main.css. But since main.css is found inside a subdirectory called CSS, if I point to css/main.css, this time that will work because we then have put main.css inside that CSS folder. So if I go to our page, none of our CSS will work. In fact, we're going to be told that the static tag is not loaded, or we need to load this tag. So we shall see something along the lines of invalid block tag on line 7. So Django will even show us that specific line that contains that error. So how do we load this tag? Now, to go back to our settings.py, what allows us to be in position to see our static files in action is the django.contrib.static. Actually, that's the django.contrib. Let me go to the install apps. So the app that's helping us to be in position to work with our static files is the django.contrib.static files. It provides for us different tags like the static tag we've just looked at, as well as the filters, or basically a set of filters to help us load tags and filters for our static files. I don't know if I've confused you, but what this does is to help us be in position to do exactly what we were doing inside our base.html file, which is to use the static tag to load CSS files or JavaScript files or images so that we can display them on a template. So for us to make use of this, each time we start a fresh HTML template, we then have to use a specific tag called the load tag. And what this does is to be in position to help us to load stuff, or load variables or tags or filters from an app. For this case, we are loading from the static app. We are loading the static tag. So when you say load static, we shall then go ahead and load that tag. So if I come right in here, I'll save, and when I save, when I go back to my template right here and refresh, I'll see no errors, but then I think I'll have to restart my server for this to take effect. So when I stop my server, I'll Ctrl+C, CLS, I will run the server, and in this case you see that our fonts have changed. So that means that we are now in position to manipulate styles on our website. We can also change colors by doing things like maybe can pull up my main.css, and I will go ahead and maybe say color red or color blue to change all the text to blue. So when I go back the side, all elements that are going to be affected by the color will be blue, and that is exactly what or how we can add styles to our template. Now, just like I explained, this is very necessary in case you want to add your individual styles to your files. But there are very many CSS frameworks that are being used in the real world, things that can allow you to have a lot of functionality which is very easy to use and can help you be in position to write better CSS without having to deal with the underlying details. And that's what we are going to be using Bootstrap for. So I'm going to eliminate the stuff I have in here and I'll save. So that means we shall go back to our CSS right here without any styles. But I'll keep the link because that's what I'm going to be using to set the font. I'm going to navigate to Google Fonts to just pick a font that I'm going to be using for the website. So I'll browse fonts and I will pick a specific font I want for this website. Now, depending on what you want, you will find a font you want here. Now, for this specific application, I want to choose a simple font. It honestly depends on preference, so please choose whatever you want. I will go ahead and choose. There's a font I've seen that I like. I'm experiencing some lag, so please be understanding. Yeah, this is robot or condensed. That's what I want to be using for this. So I guess I'll have to search for it or tap it. I'm experiencing a little lag here. So yeah, I'm going to choose Roboto condensed and okay, maybe I'll use this font called Oswald. So how can I use this with my CSS? What I have to do is to just go ahead and click on get font. And once I click on get font, I can get the embed code. Now this will only work when you're connected to the internet, but what this does is to provide for you the links to this font in your, so this is what we're going to actually add to our base.html. I'll go to my website right here or my base template, and what I'm going to do is to then paste those two things or those two links to the website, to the font. Sorry for that. I'm experiencing some lag. I don't know if you guys can still hear me.
I studied psychology in school. So
Okay, seems I'm still live. I can't monitor myself, and that's why I'm having to ask all of you if I'm being viewed. But if I go ahead and now I've pulled up this Copilot thing, Shift Alt F, format that. So what I've done here is to pull in a font from Google Fonts, and what this is going to do is to just add a little bit of beauty to the text we're going to have within our website. So just like I was saying, the things I wanted are basically these styles right here. So this is the CSS we are going to need. So what I will do is to go ahead and copy this font. So this is Oswald Sans Serif. If I go to our styles, which is in our main.css, I can still do what we did right here, but instead of having the color, we shall only have the font, and that is, yeah, font family Oswald Sans Serif. So that will be our font. The next thing I'm going to do is to add Bootstrap, because that's what we're going to be using for the rest of this series to help us define the CSS without having to write CSS. So I'm going to go to our products, and if I refresh, this time we shall see that our fonts have changed, which is nice. And now, yeah, our fonts have changed, which is nice. Now we can go ahead and try to work with our Bootstrap. So I'm going to pull in Bootstrap. I'll copy the link to the CDN. All I need now is going to be the Bootstrap CSS right here. So I'll copy this to the clipboard, and then I will paste this right after, or right, I think I'll place this because I want to load the main.css after Bootstrap, so that we have our fonts work. So I'll go ahead and just add the Bootstrap right here. And when you go back to our page and refresh, we now see we have our fonts, but then Bootstrap has also been loaded. So yeah, that's how our page is looking initially. So yeah, now we can basically have the freedom to work with Bootstrap and also incorporate the styles that are coming from our fonts. So the first thing I'm going to do is to pull in some Bootstrap components to help us be in position to organize our layout in a very beautiful manner. If you want to understand how that works, you can go to Bootstrap or getbootstrap.com, which is the official website of the Bootstrap CSS framework, and go to docs. So inside docs, you can go to the component section right here, and that's where you can find different things for the different parts of your UI you may want to build. So the first thing I'm going to do is to modify our navbar. I will go to navbar as the component, and that is going to show us different things about navbars. Now I want to go ahead and look at each of these navbars, but for now I think I'll just copy the first navbar. I'll see, or maybe try to look around and see which other navbar I may need. So I guess I'll have to work with the first navbar. So we can go ahead and then use this navbar right here. We shall edit it to add the sections we want. And the beauty is we can still also include HTML from other parts of the UI. For this case, we can go ahead and define or create another folder, and I'm going to call this the includes folder. Now the includes folder is going to be a folder for that HTML we want to have for specific components of our application, but then we can just inject that into any template. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to add a new file called navbar.html, and inside navbar.html is where I'll add the Bootstrap for that specific navbar we've got from Bootstrap. So I'll copy that and then paste it there. And then instead of going to our navbar within our base template or having this navbar like this, we can just pull in that navbar by using a special tag called the includes tag. So all this is present inside the Django template language, and you can just say includes /navbar.html. Yeah, so what we've done so far is to just pull in HTML from navbar.html, but navbar.html is just HTML that is separate from our base template that we can just inject in there. So if we were to go back here, we refresh, we now see that we have this responsive navbar right here, and this is the Bootstrap navbar. So it is responsive, it works out of the box, and yeah, we have ourselves a navbar. Now we are going to modify this so that we can at least make use of it. So what I'm going to do is to basically go ahead and edit some of the sections I have in here so that we can have our content that we initially had. So I'll come to our navbar in our in the include we defined right here. The first thing I'm going to change is the title or the name of this. Now remember, for our case, we have been hard coding these URLs. For example, the route to our root endpoint was slash. This time we're going to go ahead and call this products or product reviews, and then we have, so when I refresh, that's going to be product reviews, and then we shall have home. So home will also point to home. So for now, I'm just going to leave them as hard-coded URLs, and then I'll show you how the Django template syntax allows us to add them as dynamic URL. So I can say this is also slash, and then I think I'll get rid of the drop down. I don't think we need it. I'll just remove also the disabled. So I'll just come right here, remove this, and then maybe what I'll keep are the link. So I'll just paste that right here. Okay, so now to go back here, what I'm going to do is to navigate to the links I've created right here. And what I'm going to do is to first of all change this to our about. So this is going to be our contact page. And yeah, here we can be in position to then add the links just like we had coded them at the start. So this is going to be our slash about. And then we shall have our slash contact. Okay, so once we've defined those, if we are to go back to our browser, this time if we are to refresh, we're going to have link. Let me see what happened here. So I didn't save here, so I'll save. If I go back to my browser, if I refresh, we now have our links just like we created them at the start of the video. So homepage, this is going to be our homepage, and about page is going to be our about page, and then contact is going to be our contact page, which is amazing. So we now have some styling. Now this search form is something we shall use later, so what I'm going to do is to just go ahead and comment it out. So I'll just come right down here, and we have a special tag for commenting stuff out in the Django templating syntax. There's that tag called comment that we can use to then just wrap all the UI that we want to comment. So if I come right here and refresh, we now see that no such thing as that UI exists within our template, which is amazing. So yeah, now that we've been able to pull in our products from our views, let us work on our main layout content area. So I'm going to come down in our template right here. So this is the one we included, which is our nav bar. And what I'm going to do is to make the main content area be a container. So I'll add a class called container to it. So this is a Bootstrap class. And if I refresh, we now see that everything is going to be pulled a little bit inside. But we can also give it some margin from the top by coming and specifying that this is going to be margin top 4. So MT4 stands for margin top 4. And what that will do is to pull products a little bit lower. Another thing we're going to do is to show all the data we've displayed for the products inside our product section. So to do that, I'm going to go to the nav to the Bootstrap documentation right here. And what I'll do is to go to our cards section, or our cards right here. So these are cards, and what they do is to display information in cards. So what I'm interested in is to display product information inside cards that look like this, but they won't look exactly like that. So what I'm going to do is to just pull in some more data from the backend. So I'll go back to our index. So HTML, and then I will define how these are going to be. So what I'm going to do is to define this product section and add some Bootstrap classes to it to make it be sort of like a grid section, or a CSS grid section. Now we have things organized in rows and columns. So I'll do that by introducing the class row. And then I can provide MT4 so once I've done that, each product will then stand in a column of its own, or what I can do is to just make sure that I add products inside cards. So I can go ahead and grab the HTML for a card from the Bootstrap documentation right here. I'm experiencing some lag. I don't know why that is. So I want a specific card that has images, because our data has images as well. So I'll copy this card, and then I go back to my HTML. So I will go to our product section right here. I remove our H4. And I'll then paste in that card we've copied from the Bootstrap documentation. I've actually not copied. Did I copy? I'm experiencing a little lag, so please empathize with me. I don't know if you can hear me. Guys, can you please leave something down in the chat for me? Maybe tell me if you're following or something. Okay, so I'm going to copy the card right here and then paste it down in the product section right here. So I'll just go ahead and paste this right here. And once I've pasted it, next thing is going to be for me to then sort of add a column class to each card we're going to have. So what I'm going to do is to make each of these cards be just a third of the entire width of our container, because Bootstrap operates in a way that the length is always going to be 12. So if you are calculating the number of items, you need to sort of calculate their width in terms of multiples of 4 or 3. So in this case, I can do something like column 4. So that means I'll have 3 sections displaying only 3 cards. So if I come right here and refresh, I'll then have these cards being rendered in this way. So we need to then provide an image for the specific card. So let me go back. I specified 4, but now I'm saying width 18 rem. I don't know if I can adjust this to 19 rem. So this is exactly what I'm having right now. I think it's because I have sort of, okay, even if we have it that way, there is no problem. But what I needed was to have basically cards, 3 cards on each row, and we can have 3 cards on each row, and we can have some space in between them. So maybe what I can do is to add those styles right here. I can say that each card will have some margin, top of 4, and then we shall have it having a column of, this is going to be column, let me just say column 4. So that's how it's going to look. Now I guess I'll have to refer to the Bootstrap documentation in here for layouts. So let me see, flex float. So this is layout. And then under layout, I have to go inside the grid section and to see how to handle these. So I guess I have to first add the data that I have for me to be in position to do what exactly I want. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull in the data from our server side or from our views. So each image is going to have a product URL, and that's something we can access on the product.image URL. I'm experiencing a lot of lag right now. I don't even know what is happening. But what I'm going to do is to just put this into my variable tags, so my variable right here. So that's going to be our product image. We can add the product name as the alt attribute. So I can come right in here and change this. So I'll make this the product.name. So if you're wondering where I'm getting this data, all this data is coming from data.py. So yeah, that's the name, the description, the price, and everything. But I do not need price because this is a review. It's a review website. So I'll just remove that, and yeah. So we're going to have card title. So card title in our case is going to be the product name. So I will go ahead and remove that. So card title is going to be that. Okay, so yeah, now yeah, I'm going to add a product description to this text right here. So I'm going to add the product description, but keep in mind that these product descriptions can be long, and there's a specific way we can be in position to reduce their size. Now there's this thing called filters. Filters are basically Django's ways of helping us to perform some sort of like method calls onto the objects we provide within our variables. So we can use the truncate chars. I think it's called truncate chars. Let me try to find out from the docs. By the way, it's very good to follow along while using the docs. I'm a little bit messed up because of the lagging of my machine. I don't know if it's because of the browser or because of OBS. I'm honestly not sure. So I'll close some of the stuff I have there. Now, if I have this, I want to go ahead and use truncate chars. So just in case you are not sure of anything, please refer to the documentation. So truncate chars is a Django filter for allowing you to specify the number of characters you want to cut from a specific string. So truncate chars, Django. So we can get the value and then truncate chars and then specify the number of. So yeah, if I refresh, now seeing truncate chars, provide the two arguments, and then that so I guess I'm not supposed to add the space. Then I will apologies for my lag. I am really facing a lot of lag on my end. I guess I'll have to do something with OBS to see if I can. Now we have something like this. So yeah, it's going to just display the first 25 characters and then it will truncate. So I want to maybe say something like 35 or 40. Let's say 35 and we see. So yeah, that's how it's going to be. Now one other thing I want to do is to go ahead and provide the category, because each product is going to be contained within a category of its own. So I can say something like B for bold, and then I can provide category, and then yeah, we can have a category inside there. So we have different categories for different items. Now if you're wondering where I got these cards, I got them from the Bootstrap documentation, and now I'm trying to fill in data that is coming from our data right here, and we are seeing how Django is allowing us to be in position to add those that data, just like you see right here. Now there's also this link right here. Now for our case, we are not going to be using buttons, but we shall be maybe using card links. So I'll say card link. So this will be card link detail, and then here we shall say class card link. So this will be make a review. So these are the different pages we shall navigate to when we click on a specific product card. So for now, we have been able to see how we can use Django to do dynamic stuff on the front end. And yeah, this is where I shall continue from tomorrow. I apologize for everything that went wrong within this video, but I hope you have got to pick something out of this video and learn something about Django templates. I hope to see you in the next one. See you guys. Bye.